connected to audio.
George, I had a really great chat with Rhonda this morning, and please watch your space. We are looking at launching a few bits and pieces, which we will keep you up to date as well, of course.
Good. I love your videos, by the way, for the AITC. Fabulous.
Awesome. That's good. Let's promote it, huh?
Yeah. And Martin has been doing some lectures and some talks and some workshops for AITC as videos, by the way, and they're accessible on the AITC website on the front page. Where are you?
Very good.
Hi, where are you? I can see you there, but I can't see your picture. Anyway, it's 3 o'clock, so we need to start because realize, you know, we're all extremely busy people, and particularly the speakers and the guests that come along and the participants. I realize how the positions that we've got people in, I'm absolutely amazed that we've attracted the type of audience and the quality of, not the quality, but the positions that people hold, obviously quality people, but they're all very busy. So I keep to times. I welcome all the participants today. I was expecting 26. I've had 3 apologies since then, but we can see the ones that are there on the screen, which is 12, 16, 19. Today's speakers, we've got Mark Normoyle, Mark Weatherley, Marcus Moore, and Paul Rifkin. We're going to ask them to give their presentations first, and I'd ask that people don't actually disturb them. We try and give them about 3 to 8 minutes, depending on what they got to say. They open their mind, just as a stimulus. This is not necessarily questions to them, but just as a stimulus questions. The topic today, of course, is looking at cementing relationships with associations. If you have a look at over 90% of professional cooks and chefs in Australia do not belong to any association. The question must be asked, why? Many senior chefs are associated or affiliated with multiple associations. I know that some have got up to 5 memberships. So does that mean no single organization provides the resources and the activities that they require, so that they've got to split themselves amongst all the others? Which begs the question is, how long can they afford to keep on funding 5 associations? Is it in the interest of chefs in the future to belong to a network? Because, you know, we've got Facebook, we've got Zoom, we've got all sorts of different activities now that, you know, the old time fashioned meeting in the pub for an afternoon during split shift, or meeting an association once a month, how, you know, is that outdated? One of the questions that I think maybe needed to be asked, or thought about at least, is, you know, does this crisis offer us all the opportunity to bury our individual thoughts and come together in some format? Because, you know, there are many different ways we can do that. I think join officially, we can join unofficially by just a memorandum of understanding and accepting everybody else's services or whatever. And you know, just a memorandum of understanding to be signed by all the organizations. We tried that once before. I think I'd like to look at the opportunity of reviving that. So, and last but not least, I think I mentioned it, you know, can chefs afford more than one association, particularly in the future? I asked the 4 panelists, starting with Mark Weatherley, Marcus Moore, and Paul, in that order, to give us their take on the question. So over to you, Mark Normoyle.
Thank you, George, and greetings, everyone. It's great to see you all, and hope you're all doing well. Look, it's a really interesting question, George, and me, myself, as well as a couple of other panel members, have been presidents of Chefs Associations, so we really do appreciate the amount of time and effort that go into organising and running an association. So, and when I was president, it was basically, I think it'll be almost 10 years ago now, and the time has changed a lot in the last 10 years. At that time, we actually put forward as LTB to have a part-time person who could actually run the association for us. At the time, we were financial enough to do it. And we didn't go ahead with it, but at the time, that's what we were looking to do. And I think it's important to note that all of the chefs associations are run by volunteer chefs who are busy people, time poor, they do it on top of their other jobs. So is there a potential to amalgamate in some ways? Yes and no. They all do, all the associations from ACF to LTB to all the other associations, all do different things for different people. I would definitely say that the communication lines in some way need to be improved, so that we're not all trying to attack the same supplier, the same sponsor, the same audience. I think, are they relevant? 100%. I think for myself, Chefs Associations helped me a lot with my career and my networking. I think they're good not only for chefs, but for suppliers as well, and for people in general. And they do have a voice. It's just a matter of, and Nick Blackmore, who's online, so they can attest just how much work goes into to looking after an association. So if there is some way of pooling some sort of resources and making it more global around Australia, that would be great. It was definitely one thing we looked at when I was with LTV, was to make it Australia-wide. Couldn't happen back then, it didn't work, but in this day and age, with, as you mentioned, George, with Zoom, with online meetings, with the ease that we can communicate now, it definitely has potential. So we don't have to be in person at meetings, so we have the opportunity to, touch base and communicate a lot simpler now. So, yeah, that's my sort of thoughts on that one, George.
Good. Okay. Thank you. All right, Mark Weatherley, what are your thoughts on the question?
Thanks, George, and everyone again. Apologies if I repeat what I say a few times. I've actually written things down, so I took a bit of time out to go into a little bit, maybe in a bit too much depth in the current situation, but I do apologise if I repeat and what Mark has said, but it is a great question. We're all working and living in an environment that we have never had before. There's been no real precedent in recent history about what we're doing. The social fabric that binds us all together socially, personally, and at work has all had to modify, and that's just going to continue throughout this time. Our industry, I believe, is able to react with that, and it's a great industry, and there's going to be individuals and companies that will get behind this. Companies like where I am at the moment, we've all had to modify our workstation and our operations. So what the clubs need to do. There's going to be activities, routine, spur of the moment, interactions, social distancing. Here we are all on Zoom, but then it's I believe, a new style of life that we're going to be entering in. How is a club going to embrace this? I read some of your points, George, that you mentioned the Australian Culinary Council. That's an interesting thought, I believe. How will that work, and what will it stand for, and what will do? They're all other questions that probably needs to be discussed as well. But we all need to start thinking of how we give back to membership. I believe we can still have a number of groups in the landscape as this landscape is changing. It's an exciting time in the environment, and we're all going to have to adapt. I noticed that Michael Lambie has adapted his way of thinking in the industry with takeaway burger and a wine bar. Shane Delia is in the same I suppose frame of mind. What we did in the past, we're going to have to potentially move away from to a point, and I think it's a great opportunity for clubs to be there for membership, offering guidance and support for the industry as a whole. We're all not meant to be solitary individuals, and I do know that LTB, when I was president, its foundations at the beginning was built on a social network at a certain level of the industry. So, you know, we're all meant to eat, drink, talk amongst each other, argue, console each other, work, and play. The situations that impose us of a new kind of isolation where we do rely on phones and other devices to stay connected but I think social media to a point is like a fax of real life. I have around 1,000 friends on Facebook and a handful that I could really feel, you know, if I did find myself seriously ill, that by clicking a crying face emoji, there's really just no substitute for a person to be there. But look, what else? What else am I going to say? Like, I agree with what Mark said. There's only so much we can do away from each other. I think still do need the single groups, as I was saying before, but I think a few key groups to assist each other and engage in each other's membership. It would probably be a good format to look into. We're open to suggestions. We have to navigate this together while trying our best to be flexible. And this is where I think an umbrella organisation could work quite well with each club involved. So we're all working together, not individually, so we can all work coherently. There seems to be a lot of focus on they do this, they do that, but we need to somehow collaborate together and move forward. I've always thought that the CPA in accounting is a fantastic organisation for a membership club, and maybe that's something we need to look at, but it offers membership everything. But, look, that's my point of view, and sorry if I rambled a bit. But,
no, you didn't ramble. You made some very, very good points, and thank you. Okay, we'll now turn our focus to Marcus Moore. Marcus, as you know, was very high profile in Australia and went to an even higher profile overseas and has a huge amount still to offer the industry. So he gives us an outside aspect of the question from another country's point of view, as well as his experience from Australia. So over to you, Marcus.
Afternoon from Cambodia. Regarding chefs associations, when I was years ago, I was vice president of the Hong Kong Chefs Association. The Hong Kong Chefs Association was a very, very strong association. There was only one association in Hong Kong. In fact, originally it was Le Toc Blanche Hong Kong, but they took over and they became independent. By doing that, they had a lot more, how do you say, strategies in terms of revenues, strategies in terms of competitions, grooming young chefs. For example, there used to be a lot of, in those days, a lot of suppliers' dinners, cocktail parties, etc., showcasing new products and things. Now, I was a chef at that time in a smaller hotel, but the big chefs in Hong Kong, if they were invited to a supplier cocktail party, they said no, either all the membership is invited or none of us go, because otherwise it was every invitation would go to the Peninsula, Mandarin, Shangri-La, Marriott, etc., etc. So they made sure that every younger and up-and-coming chef had an opportunity to attend as well, which I think is a great thing. When I moved to Australia, I mean, Australia had the Le Toc Blanche, Australian Culinary Federation, Académie Culinaire de France, and the sort of side one is, of course, the Chaîne de Rodier. So how many chefs associations can people actually belong to I'm sure the fees are, quite high now if everybody has to pay fees, particularly in this economic climate. My suggestion in Australia would be to have one chefs association with branches in each state or city. However, Australia is a huge country, so it's very difficult to organize because it's so spread out. I mean, here in Cambodia, we have two chefs associations, one based in Phnom Penh and one based in Siem Reap. And there's a little bit of angst amongst the two because the Chefs Association in Siem Reap holds the wax membership. So us in Phnom Penh, we can't get endorsement from wax because Siem Reap has already got it. However, Siem Reap has got no money to organize competitions. They've got no money to do anything, and with the finances. But still, the two associations cannot agree to have one, and perhaps alternate the president every 2 years or anything like that. I mean, chefs associations for me are about mentoring. They're about training of our apprentices, which certainly Le Toc Blanche or still does, I'm assuming, runs a fantastic competition. It's the exchange of ideas. It's the exchange of, I guess, talking about products, cooking methods, etc., etc., etc. So I think if you had one chefs association, it would be much stronger in terms of managing to get revenues, sponsorship for competitions, etc., etc. That's my take on it. Back to you, George.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Terrific. Good to see that we can see what's happening in other countries and what's happening in your little neck of the woods. Now, handing over to Paul. Paul, welcome to the forums, symposiums. We've had some good fun, and we're really glad to see you here too. You've got a very high profile, and you're always willing to give your mentoring ideas out to no matter whom. So we're looking forward to your contribution.
Okay, thanks a lot, George, and g'day everybody. I know some of you, but not all of you. What I will say is that when I was president of the Sydney Chefs back in the 90s, we had about 450 members, and we would get about 100 to 200 people out for a dinner, of which most were chefs. Now it seems to be that the memberships are about the same, yet there's a heap more chefs. The amount of people that show up to these dinners is now just about all sponsors and other people that are, trying to get into with the chefs, but the chefs aren't there. And why aren't they there? Because the associations have become so tunnel visioned in what they do, whether it be competition or whatever it is, that they don't focus on what is really required as an industry and chefs. You've only got to look at the Australian Chefs Network on, on Facebook and see how many members there are and see the banter that goes on in there and what Brent has sort of put together. And if that doesn't tell you that there is an effective body required to hold it all together and to give the chefs of Australia a lobbying opportunity so they can actually lobby government, that they can actually have an effect on what the curriculum is and what the training is, on all aspects of being a chef, and also encourage people to be chefs by actually having that lobby and having that platform. Because at the moment, everything is reactionary. Where were the chefs associations when everybody was getting done for ripping off all the chefs that have been working? They just sat around going, oh, well, that's the way it's always been. Where was the answers? Why weren't they there? These situations have been around for decades, and yet there's never been an effective opportunity or an effective association in Australia that's done anything. And they still have a ridiculously low number of members compared to the amount of chefs that there are. So I tried to bring all associations together in the late 90s, and various, you know, political people sort of hijacked things and made it what they wanted it to be, and everybody ran off in their own direction. And I think that's what you've ended up with. And, you know, you can say you got chain rotisserie and that's an association. I've been to one of those. I don't think there was a chef there. Every single person seemed to be someone else. So it's like, where are the chefs and what are you going to do about it? And there's a lot of intelligent people and highly skilled people and you know, individuals that have been in the industry a long time sitting on this webinar. And I think the challenge is for them as a group, or us as a group, is to sit there and go, well, what really can be done? And how do you harness the power of what Brent's sort of put together and use that as an effective thing to actually have a certain amount of power and influence, instead of sitting around moaning about there's no chefs, no one's coming in the industry, we've got to import everybody. And it's just been going on for decades because no one will actually sit down and workshop it, do a SWOT analysis on what is required, and treat it as a marketing exercise as to what is required and how we're going to put it together. And you can keep going on about, oh, the sponsors this and the sponsors that, and there's no money. Round and round and round it goes. I tell you what, if you had an effective offering, you would have sponsors tripping over themselves to throw money at the organisation if they could see that what you were going to end up with is something that was an effective body and something that was truly representative of chefs. Because at the moment, and I've been in these associations for decades, I'm just not seeing it. That's my little 10 cents.
Terrific. Thank you very, very much. Just a couple of points there, which I thought were interesting. You mentioned that we've got a ridiculously low number. It calculates out that only around about 5 to 7% of people working in the industry as a cook or a chef belong to an association. Don't look at it like that. Look at it, the fact is that 93% don't. And that,
absolutely,
you know,
massive opportunity.
You know, that's the opportunity in my book. What is interesting, you talked about the numbers, Paul. It just came back to my mind that back in 1980, 84, I was president of an organization called the APPC.
Yeah, no,
We had
well.
650 members in Victoria alone.
Yep.
Now, it was growing, and all of a sudden it just died. And that was a very difficult thing to sort of accept, but that's what happened. I just have a few more comments myself, then I'll hand it over to the group. You know, we have 17 organizations in Australia. I've counted up 17 different groups in one way or another. 3 major ones, I call major ones, those being actually legally registered, ACF, LTB, and AITC. We've got 17 others in one form. There's a Chinese association, there's an Italian association, there's, as mentioned before, La Kinderota Steer, and it goes on and on and on. To me, a chef is a chef is a chef. The person who's dedicated their life to cooking, who's a professional, and I think they should all somehow find some kind of way of banding together. So that's my take. So yeah, I like to maybe ask a few people of you to make a comment themselves. I'll start off with Martin. I think, Martin, you've been a very strong advocate of you know, strength in numbers. What is your take on this question?
Thanks, George. Yeah, I just made a comment that leverage is key, and I got a question, what do I mean by that? I really mean that we do need to work together. I think having so many different associations and everybody tries to survive and do their own thing, it just doesn't add up from an energy and time perspective. And who was it? Aristotle who said the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So I completely agree with what Paul said. We do need to come together. We need to start to leverage on the time and the energy with a common goal. Really important. Somebody has a party, I think. Who wants to have a meeting if you can have a party? Yeah.
Where's Udo? Udo, well, you had a couple of comments before you. I noticed you sent through chat. Would you like to expand on, your ideas of? You're saying that there could be strength in numbers, basically. Could you like to expand on that?
Little green schools to go with them.
Yeah, I'd like to explain a little bit about it. Because in my opinion, if you've got many sort of minute associations, it doesn't do much. If you've got one strong association that maybe works with all the issues together, that we can see, I think we would be on a better ball game, because people work together. You must be working together to actually achieve things. You cannot do it as individual small groups. You must be like amalgamating whatever issues there are there.
Yep. What about you, Nick? What's your take on the question?
I think really, if I look at LTB, for example, we are primarily a social group. We get together, there's the camaraderie, we mentor each other, we have our apprentice competition, which goes quite well. But first and foremost, we're a social group. If we were to go to a national organisation, you would need to have, I believe, a paid management committee, because having volunteers run it, it's always left up to the same few members who are there each time. They set up, they pack up, they come and do like we have our winery picnic each year. We might get 80 people, but only 4 or 5 people, you included, George, come and set the thing up before people get there. We're there late packing it down when everyone else goes home. You can't do that on a national level with volunteers. So if we do go down a national track, whether it's LTB, ACF, whoever it may be, you're going to need to have a paid management committee to run it. And then you might get your hundreds of members, and then you might get some leverage within government. But whilst you've got a volunteer organisation, it's always going to be a struggle.
Well, you make the point that is almost a question. When we've got so many chefs associations and people are spreading themselves thinner and thinner, chefs associations haven't got the numbers to actually put into place to run the thing, because there are people doing it in other associations and they can only do so much. So by coming together, you almost bring those people together. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah,
it does. And it also depends why you're joining an association. I mean, for me, I get to meet up with people who I deemed as mentors. There's people who taught me at TAFE when I was a young apprentice. For me, I get a chance to mix with people like that and shape the way I would like to go about my business based on what I've learned over the years. So it depends why you join. I mean, some join for a business thing to promote their business. Some just join to catch up with mates and have a beer and a chat and how you're going, how your numbers, how you're going each week. So everyone has a different reason why they join an association. Joining it for the camaraderie, that's fantastic. If it's a business thing, as Mark Normoyle mentioned, we tried to go national with LTB. That didn't work, because we can't have a meeting in Melbourne and expect members in Sydney to be part of that and feel part of the group. So it depends why you join.
May have had some customers yet, so yeah, today was busy. Yeah, so
we have a secret person somewhere in the room. Your take on it.
George, maybe mute everyone, and then people, individuals, just can take them off mute.
Jaman?
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all. My suggestion is that it's always good to be united. What we have to see how we're gonna be sustainable, how it's going to work. Post-COVID, I very much agree with Paul Rifkin, what he's saying. If there are so many associations there, how many cooks are there? How many actual cooks? And what we're looking for, how we can help the industry. That should be our main focus. Only way we can help the industry is that we get united. So many associations not gonna work. There's no way, and we all know about it. So that's my take, that this is the only way to go. Well, as Marcus Moore said, that it's a huge country. It will be hard. Maybe we might find a way, perhaps one major associations in one major state, and then we work together to start with, and then we see how it works, instead of having only one in Australia. Just as I'm just throwing it out. So every state have one major, so that means we cut down into more than 50% of different associations. And then we see how the logistic is, what's the outcome. Our main focus should be our industry, our cooks, how we can support them, how we can support the suppliers, what we can do for them. Being social ourselves, going for the party, having a picnic, that's all secondary. That means we are thinking about ourselves. What we'll think about young chefs, young cooks, their training, their educations, supporting the suppliers, supporting the farmers. That's only we can do it when we are united. Thank you.
Right. Just letting people be very clear that the AITC is a registration association. It doesn't run any social activities. Its whole philosophy was to identify people with the appropriate experience and the appropriate training to come together in some form of industry license, if you'd like to call it that way. That was the philosophy behind the start of the organization. It doesn't try to be a chefs association that provides all the services. And I particularly see that, the ACF is fantastic at running competitions. They really have got a very good handle on how to run competitions at any level. LTB, I have absolutely no doubt, is the best organization for running social events, because they have run it for many years and there have been some absolutely fantastic numbers and social events. So you've got an organization that's good at competition, you've got an organization that's good at social events, you've got an organization that's focused on basically what the registration could be, in my book, agreed to, not necessarily what it is at the moment, but it could be agreed to by negotiation between the other associations. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is right. It could be just actually negotiated or talked about. But I see that those three organizations can come together with their strengths. And by using their strengths, you form into one sort of organization. In terms of, if I may make a comment, Nick, please forgive me, but LTB is a Victorian organization, but now with Zoom, with other platforms, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Victorian organization. AITC is an example of an organization that is Victorian registered, but it's got members in every state and it's got council members in other states. So, you can do it that way. Anyway, can we have a few other people make a comment, please? Stephen Tyron, you've been there listening there. And, what about your take on
well, to be honest, I mean, you've got to look at why will a chef want to join an association? What's the benefits? They're working all these hours, maybe earning not so much money and time poor. So I think this day and age, the younger generation, there's got to be something pregnant and beneficial to be part of a chef's association. I think the times have changed. Not, in our early days when it was like, pride to be a member of a chef's association. This day and age, the chefing world is completely different, in my opinion. So we really set up something to really, you know, everybody's talking about suppliers, but to attract chefs, cooks / chefs, you know, what's the benefit? Yeah, so that's my opinion.
Paul just sent through a chat saying, you know, let's have a brainstorm. Fantastic idea, Paul. But may I put the question is, who organized that brainstorm? You know, I'd like to throw it open to the whole. Because my attitude sitting here was, okay, I've heard this for many years. Let's all work together. Let's all talk together. Let's all do this together. But then, whenever you try and get everybody in the one room, either people don't turn up, or when they do, they're a bit parochial about it. And I'd like to know how we start the drive. How do we get this brainstorm going? Because the brainstorm is a good idea. You get a few people in the room and say, look, this is what we want to achieve. Let's work out how. So who would like to comment on that? Who's going to be the driver and how does it work?
Well, being the word I used is professional, and that requires someone outside the room to actually come into the room and have a look at what's in the room, and then look at it it has to be looked at from a marketing point of view. Like you can't look at this from a bunch of chefs looking at it. How can we change it as a bunch of chefs? You need someone who markets stuff, and they don't care if they're selling, Boost juice or if they're selling sand shoes. To them, it's just marketing. They're just trying to see, what is your product? What are you trying to sell? And how do we sell it? And how does that all start? Well, you've got to make a decision that that's what you want to do. And then you've got to try and work out what comes next. But it has to be done by someone from the outside.
When you say someone from outside, are you saying it should be a hospitality person that's not a chef, or someone completely outside of the industry?
Someone who's in marketing or advertising.
Right.
Because it's a marketing thing that you're talking about. Because this just goes in circles. Because we don't have the money, we don't have the time, we don't have this. Who's going to do it? And it just goes round and round in circles. Nothing's changed in decades, and it won't change until you actually look at it and go, well, what are we trying to achieve? How do we get there? We can't do this on our own.
Hey man, you had your hand up. You got your microphone off.
So what I believe is, before we go in path of marketing, as Paul is saying, we have to make sure our visions is right, our aims and objectives are sorted out. And then that's very, very fundamental things to among us, all cooks, that we have to have very clear vision, our aims and objective, what we want to achieve. Then the second step is how we want to execute it, implementation. And this is where the marketing strategist falls into it. Yep, thank you.
Marcus, do you have your hand up?
No, sorry, I'm playing with my iPad. Sorry. Listening intently though. Huh?
Okay, brainstorm. I like the idea of someone outsider. That's a very good question. But how? What? Unless you open the door and do something, go in it. How do we open that door? How do we get people together? How do we actually try and start this brainstorm process? Do we get together and say, let's hire a marketing person? Or do we get one of the associations to convene a meeting of all three? Or do we put out a paper? Or I don't know. I think most things have been tried.
George?
The last thing I believe we need is an association for sure, but why are we not starting with the current association? We have nearly all the presidents on the call now. I think it's a matter of taking the lead from one or the other association and really getting an outside person in. I do agree with Paul, because I think we are emotionally way too involved in the industry to make smart and long-term decisions. It needs to be an objective person rather than many subjective people who are feeling the pain and the pinch of the current situation. I think it comes down to leadership of the different association to have that conversation, to get back on the round table and actually put their hands up.
Yeah, George, I really like Paul's point as well about an independent, person as well. And do you think it's something potentially with, if all the numbers of associations combined, if there's a number, okay, whatever it may be, would we have a case to potentially go to government to get some sort of funding, to get some coin, to have somebody put together some sort of proposal for it, or someone to actually work on it?
I don't know the question. I don't know the answer to that question. Has anybody ever applied for government for anything?
You can certainly apply for maybe a grant.
Yeah, that's, and that's because at the end of the day, who's going to pay for it? And who's got in a association who would potentially put more money in, would want more say. And so if it's independent as such, but with involving all associations where it doesn't cost anybody anything, there could be a good case study which comes out of it potentially. I don't know. And I'm sure with current state hospitality that the government would be looking to do things for the industry, in some way, I would have thought, somewhere.
Great idea.
You can target local as well as federal. And they'll all have different options of grants to get some coin, and then to get all the major players, as Paul was saying, in the one room, and then target and spearhead a professional company with gives different options, not just one option, for what we're going to be paying for, basically.
I just want to chip in there quickly, because I just hear the two Marks talking about that. Hospitality industry has been growing extraordinary over the last years. So it was predicted by government that there will be about another 100,000 chefs needed by the year of 2022. So that's a very large number, and it will actually pay the GDP for Australia. So that's a large amount of taxpayers. So if the hospitality industry would be capable of having associations that are amalgamated and work together to achieve certain things, maybe to train the future chefs. I mean, I don't know how it's going to go after COVID, but I think certainly there will be government money available, for sure. But you need to not come as like individual little sort of parties. You need to come as a community.
Definitely need a plan. And sorry, Steve.
Sorry, can I just say that money's not easy to come by from government handouts. Look, I'm involved with a couple of other organisations as well, restaurant and catering, that are very professional. We have a paid team. It's a big operation. We have advocacy to government so that we do have a voice in government, and they're listening to us right now more than they ever have, which is great. Shared Tables is another that is a little more professional, and that Jared runs it. Very much a social club, and I think all clubs know what they want to be. Are they going to be social or professional? Is it about networking? Is it about sales? But I think regardless, they've got to be somewhat commercial. You've got to have some money. You need to have some money so they can employ staff. You can't go to the government and expect money if you haven't got runs on the board for something that appeals to them, for the training, like the competition. I mean, ACF are fantastic competitions. It's still probably the best competition in Victoria, I believe. But the handouts are not. It's kind of wishful thinking if you think an email to government will get you cash.
Talking about ACF, we haven't heard from Andrew yet.
Andrew, over to you.
I can reveal that ACF has done just exactly what you guys are talking about. We have gone to an independent person to look at the business, and all those who are ACF members, I think it's next week, you'll be getting a discussion paper to review for a change in the way the ACF is operated. We are looking to go to a business model, and those who talk about problems getting money from government, I'm in the process at the moment of getting a grant from the government to run our secondary schools competition Australia-wide. I've also been approached by the state member and the federal member for where I live for the ACF at this stage to take over a campus of TAFE, because in some European countries, associations run the colleges, not the governments, to train the cooks. But I put to all you people who are been in the industry a long time and know a lot about what's happening, why do chefs put pride aside and get together and actually do something? Because this has been, I was a member of the AGPC with George. I was also industrial liaison for 9 years with the AGPC. Some of you I know, a lot of you don't know me. I'm very outspoken. I don't play politics, and I'm in it for the chefs, for the industry, not for my own pride. And what I've seen over the years, that most associations in the past have been led by people who it's what's in it for me and not what's in it for the industry. And yes, Brent has created a great thing with his he has 2,000 or 3,000 people and asked them for a membership. How many of them would pay $10 to actually help run his organisation? Because I'm a member of that. Sometimes I'm quite a play to talk to each other. It doesn't matter where you work, what sort of, whether you work in a pub, a club, a fine dining restaurant or whatever, that's the trade, and that's where the level you work at. And everyone I see with chefs is they're all putting each other down. You know? We all have opinion on how we cook, what we do, but if I run a very successful restaurant in my local neighbourhood and I'm full every night, that makes me successful. But in will walk a high-profile chef or whatever who wants to do it, who does everything differently, says that's shit, and suddenly it's all over Facebook, which is we're forever putting ourselves down. How do we get everyone to actually get together and make it work? I'm out there trying to do that, and I can tell you there are a lot of people who are opposing the direction we're trying to go in, because everyone wants to be top dog. You know, I don't want to be the president of a national association. I have no names, books, or I have no titles to my name. I've just been cooking for 46 years and I'm appalled at the way chefs treat each other.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah. Good. I hope that the, you know, what you say is listened to by the other presidents who can think about what has been said over the last hour and to think about what actions they can individually take to sort of get together with everybody. I mean, the idea of a grant is good. As Andrew said, there's already been action, but it doesn't mean to say we can't get a grant to get together as one organisation. It does, I think, need one of the organisations to contact the other two and say, look, let's get a grant. Let's write a letter, or let's try to put somebody. It's as I think Stephen indicated, it's not going to be easy. You've got to get your rungs on the board. That was always my opinion about registration. If you can get the organisations together, I think you're starting to get the rungs on the board, and send off a letter and have a meeting with an appropriate person. It might take a long time, but you've got to start somewhere. Anybody else like to make a comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to make one comment.
Yep.
I fully agree with what Andrew just said. Everybody has their place in the kitchen, whether it's a guy who runs a fish and chip shop or it's the guy who runs best fine dining. When I came to Cambodia, I got 900 staff in my kitchen. When I first came to Cambodia, I would ask the chefs to wipe something, and they said, no, I'll call the steward. And this is the whole attitude I've had to change, because, you know, the stewards are as important here as the chefs. So we have now implemented a rule that if a chef burns the pan, the chef will clean the pan, not the steward. Then the chefs actually learn, how do you say, not to abuse their pans anymore and all that sort of stuff. But and Andrew's right with what he said. Everybody has their place. Everybody has their style of cuisine, concept, and right or wrong. Well, it's not right or wrong, because if they're successful, they're doing a great job, and if they're not successful, perhaps they just need a bit of mentoring to tweak it a little bit. You know, Paul and Mark also mentioned having paid people to run an association. I think, I mean, certainly a lot of us here have been past presidents, and we know how much work it is. We know it's the same handful of people that give the support. When you're trying to organize a wine dinner, you're trying to organize whatever it is. And so, yes, paid people, I think, are the future. But I think more important than that is that we get the chefs together. We get them, try to put them under one association. I know it's tough, but then we have more leverage with government, with suppliers, with everything we want to do. I think that's the key to move forward.
Are there any other comments? Anybody?
Just one other thing, George. I really liked Steve's comment about shared tables being a social network of chefs. I think is a great thing as well, which sometimes we forget about. So I think they're important for industry.
Right.
George, I just wanted to make one more comment.
Yep, sure.
In Tasmania, there's a new association. It's not a chef's association. It's called the Tasmanian Hospitality Association, and it's made up of the Clubs Association, the Hotel Association, I think about 4 different associations, and they have all got together to form one association to be one voice for Tasmania for the whole of the industry. If it can be done down there, surely we can do it here.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I want to comment, for that, I am Victorian President of ACF, but I am on AITC as well. And one thing, in order for somebody to be recognised by the government, you need to have 100 paid members to be registered by the fair trade people. And that's always been the sticking point, that, you know, you need to have 100 paid names, addresses of all times. And that's where Brent will come unstuck, because he can't get paid members. And I think all the associations have the same problem, because the ACF, yes, it's a national association, but it only has 7 members because it has chapters. And so each local chapter probably wouldn't have enough paid members, because you have life members and student members and all these things. So the ACF are looking to go to a national body where everyone will be a member of a national body. So the changes are coming, but it needs everyone to get on board and either support it or put your hand up and do it yourselves.
Good point. Okay. No other comments. I think we've explored everybody's ideas. I'm only hoping that from this some kind of action will come. No use having another talk fest. The associations, I think, need to sort of talk together and see whether, you know, some kind of collaboration can be organized to organize a grant or whatever, and see where we can take it from here.
I think it's really important, George, sorry if I interrupt, what is the call to action? Because otherwise you're spot on, otherwise it's just another hour of conversation. Are the chefs, because we have quite a few presidents, and I do apologize to put you on the spot, but are they willing to actually sit on the round table and have a chat? Even that could be a call to action, and say, you know what, at least we continue the conversation to have a next step.
Jaman?
Yep, I'm willing to. I'm willing to have a conversation with other presidents. Let's do it. Simple as that. Let's work.
I'm willing to do it, but it's time to not sit around and talk. It's time to have action points
That's right.
and actually
That's
action
right.
them.
Yeah.
Because these things have been talked about for 20 years and it hasn't happened.
Yeah. So
Right. I think, look, I'm happy to support a national chefs organisation, but I don't. Looking at LTB as a model, I don't think our members would want to go as a national group, but many of them would join a national association as a separate concern. I think you'll
Well, then,
find.
surely, if you have a national group, your president is based wherever, but you have your how do you say, subgroups wherever you are, and Melbourne, Victoria could run theirs like the LTB, as long as they're, I suppose, keeping in line with the National Association. So if Melbourne wanted to be a little bit more social centric, I wouldn't see that as a problem, as long as they were doing the core elements of what the national group requested, I suppose.
And I do appreciate your honesty, Nick, and I think it is so important
that's very important.
we do have a national, that we do have an association or a subgroup, whatever we want to call it, to network. Especially now, we do need to have a drink together. We do need to be able to talk. The question is, where does it fit in the big picture?
Can I ask, like Martin, I like putting people on the spot. Can I ask either Daman or Andrew or Nick, as the current presidents of an organization, Andrew being state and Nick and Daman being larger, sort of, sorry, not larger, but sort of more encompassing organizations, can you, one of you three, agree that you'll be the instigator to ring out the other two and say, can we meet on such and such a date and start the conversation? And can you then invite other appropriate people to do likewise? Is that a call to action?
Yeah, I'm happy to follow it. I'll do that. Yeah.
George, we did have that conversation with Karen about a month ago, Damon and I.
Yes, we did.
And the general consensus was we'd need to go back to our obviously respective groups. I mean, Karen's a national president of ACF. You know, I'm of a Victorian-based chefs club, so you know we can have these conversations, but it's a matter of how serious do we want to be, and because we can. This conversation's been going on for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And it will continue to do so until we have someone who says, okay, we can run a national association. I mean, LTB tried to go in more of a business direction some years back, and it fell by the wayside because the members wanted it as a social group. So not that I want to be, I'm not trying to be a party pooper or anything like that, but you can't go it alone if the group's not going to support the vision. And I've always thought that the ACF as a national body would be that national body that would rally, the government and with their state groups. Now, I was a bit shocked, I must admit, when Andrew mentioned that there's only 7 paid members in Victoria. Is that right, Andrew?
No. National body only has 7 members, as in as in each state association is a member.
Yeah.
So the national body can't actually. They can only do what the states direct. They can lobby what they like, but unfortunately the states have all been operating independently and doing their own thing because nobody wants to put their pride behind themselves and go, okay, let's all move together. Now we have 7 presidents who are prepared to do that and have said, no, we're not going to. They're all in it for most of them, until I became president of Victoria, I didn't know half of them. And they all have the same philosophy. And I think Karen is a great president and she's the right person to lead it in the right direction. Well, you know me, Nick, I've been quite outspoken about ACF in the past. Yes. I've been outspoken about other things in the past.
Yep.
But I think this is time that if we're really going to do it, otherwise what will happen is all chefs you'll still have social groups like LTB because you're very social. You still have shared tables, which is a money-making machine. Yes, they all get together. I go to shared tables things, but it's a money-making machine. It has a good business model. That Jared's a fantastic operator, and that's what ACF needs. The main association needs to go to a business model and actually earn an income to run things so that we can pay people to do it. I'll tell you, my vision that I put forward to the national body of the ACF is that you would have 7 elected, or you'd have 7 elected state representatives. That representative could be an LTB for Victoria, it could be AITC, it could be whatever. Out of those 7 elected representatives, you would then vote 1 to be the president, 1 to be the treasurer, 1 to be the vice president, and we would then pay a CEO to be the front person to the day-to-day operation of the business. The same as any other organisation runs. Then you would invite the Italian chefs, the Chinese chefs, all to be members on that association. But other than being the president or vice president, for instance, if I was on that board, my other role might be to help run competitions. At the moment, we pay someone in the office and they're doing huge amounts of work, but not a lot of it successful. You know, we focus, when we're doing competitions, it's focusing on that competition and everything else.
Yeah.
We have 8 Facebook pages. There should be 1 Facebook page for ACF National. That's it. There shouldn't be 1 for each state. You've got the Australian Chefs Network. They have 1 Facebook page. That's it. So that's their one voice. In order for it to work, there needs to be 1 of everything. And that's the model that.
Agreed.
That's the model that ACF now is working for.
It strikes me that we've got ACF is doing going about organising a national sort of look at things. I mean, even a call to action where the presidents of AITC and LTB write to Karen and say, what can we do to help? That in itself is a way of getting together. What can we actually be in? Can we be involved? Not necessarily in the organisation, but what can we do? Can we send you a letter of support? Can we organise meetings? Can we, we need to start the process to move forward. Or am I being sort of stupid?
Yeah. I tell you what, I'll put it out there. I'll put my email address on the chat now, and I ask everybody here to email me what is wrong with ACF. What you see is wrong with the ACF. We've got a national meeting on Saturday, and I'll bring it up at a national level, because I'm prepared to work hard to make it move forward, because this is the time for us to change as chefs, as associations, as a whole industry.
Yeah, great.
Okay, I must move on because it's just already 3 minutes past our time. Food for thought. Andrew's done some actions. Everybody's had their opinions tabled. Thank you so much, panel. Thank you so much, Mark, Mark Weatherley, Marcus Moore, and Paul. Your great comments from everybody. You're going down in history in driving maybe a change coming in the industry, which I think is fantastic. Please email me if you find anything in the way we address questions, how we can improve these sessions. We've got next week is the associations themselves are going to be put on the table and say, things are going to change. Are you going to change the way you operate? There's been a sort of a pattern how associations have run in the past. Will they be the same in the future? Will there be more Zoom meetings? Will there be more virtual? activities and that sort of thing. Interesting to find out from the presidents how they see the crisis affecting them personally. That'll be a very, very important question.